Be confident, be bold, be authentic, but don't forget to take action. This is Ordinary to Badass, where our stories empower women to step into the spotlight of their own lives and pursue what they're truly passionate about. It's time to step into the arena and become more than just extraordinary. It's time to become a badass with your host, Marie Sonneman.
Welcome to Ordinary to Badass, episode number 112. In this episode, you're going to hear from Kristin Fitch. Kristin is an entrepreneur, a writer, and a creative problem solver. She helps women build life on their terms and do work they love. Kristin and I talk about living life on your terms or defining life on your terms, productivity, and also pivoting. Stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss this episode. Welcome to Ordinary to Badass. Whether you're ordinary or badass, so glad you're here. Today's guest is Kristin Fitch. Kristin, thank you so much for being here. Excited to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Marie. I'm excited to talk to you today.
So before we go any further, I've got to ask you, do you consider yourself ordinary or badass?
100% badass, like I think every woman is.
I love it. I love it. So what's something that you've done that has made you feel badass?
Oh, probably many things, but I will tell you, even all the way back in, I think it was high school or beginning of college, my family decided, all of my siblings, so that's 4 other siblings and myself, and my dad decided to go bungee jumping. And I thought, oh, this will be great. This is going to be so fun. I got to the top. They hooked the big, heavy bungees to your feet. I looked down and I literally thought, oh my gosh, I feel my body was screaming like, this is crazy. You should not do this. Like, abort mission. But to be honest, my pride got the best of me. And I said, how am I going to do this? So anyways, I jumped. It was a lot of fun. But the honest truth is in that moment, it was kind of like, even though I didn't want to do it, I knew that, if I just put my mind to it, I could do it. So that's probably one of the earlier examples of being a little bit of a badass.
That's so awesome. Did that experience change your future, perception of what things you could do and things you couldn't do?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I definitely have done things that I've been afraid to do before. Now, I haven't jumped out of a plane, although I've considered it. And I've thought maybe that's a little bit further out of my comfort zone than I've been willing to do yet. But yes, absolutely. I think every time I've pushed myself, it makes it a little easier to do it the next time, and to realize that your mind's going to, just like in everyday life, it's going to try to find those. It's going to try to stop you when it feels afraid or fearful. And you have to just walk through it if you know that for the most part, it's something that, you're not going to be harmed physically. In most cases, it just feels, that it's just a trigger in your brain. So absolutely.
So what is something that you say to yourself now when you have those triggers in your brain?
Yeah. So I try to just look at actually, I remember someone said this to me. They said, a lot of times we're afraid of something, but when we really look at what the fear is, it's not like a bear's chasing you in most circumstances. Now, in that case, maybe you should be afraid and you should try to get away from the bear. But if it's a normal everyday circumstance, the honest truth is, if it's not going to harm us, it's just a reaction. And so in that case, I know that I can just take the step forward. And I know that on the other side of fear are so many great things that we can experience, but we have to step through it.
Yes, so good. So Kristin, can you take a second and tell us about yourself? Give us a short bio.
Sure. So I'm a mom. I have 3 teenage sons or 1 grown son, and I've done tons of things. I've worked in marketing technology for over 20 years. I've both worked for companies and I've started my own companies. One of the companies I started was with my mom in 2008 called Ziggity Zoom. And that is a international site for families and early educators for kids between 2 and 8 or 10 years old. And that site did really well for, quite a long time. We reached over 10 million visitors over time. But the honest truth is, the revenue streams kind of slowed down, and I shifted into not focusing on that full time. And then since then, I have, also worked for another company, which now I'm just consulting with. And now I'm moving into my new podcast that's coming, or that just came out. And I'm also moving into doing more coaching and mentoring, which I have done in the past. And then also I will be releasing 2 books later this year and into next year.
Wow, you are busy. I like it. So I thought it was cool how you said you shifted from one thing to another. I think it can be so hard to shift. Like we can get stuck in what we're doing, and it's hard to find the courage maybe to shift into something new. What was your thought process, and how did you get yourself to make a change?
So I think what happens with most of us is we get stuck in our identity and our titles. And so what happens is we identify, for instance, I was in marketing technology for a long time. So we can identify that as part of us. And it's sometimes hard for us to either let that go or to add something to it. But we need to realize that the way we grow and the way that we expand is by adding things into what we do. So nowadays, so many people are what they call multi-passionate or multi-hyphenated, right? So they might be a writer, they might be an artist, an entrepreneur. So I would say, you just have to be willing to say, you know what, I can do this and I can do something else. It's much like a business saying we have 2 or 3 revenue streams. Is there an opportunity to expand and have a 4th revenue stream? So if you see it more from you're expanding your opportunities, you're expanding your abilities, then it doesn't need to be scary at all. No one's saying you have to get rid of your first title or your first role. Just like if you're a mom, it doesn't mean you can't be something else. You can be a mom and so I just encourage people to see it more as growing and expanding, not necessarily that they have to leave something behind, at least fully.
Yeah, I think that can be so helpful. Just sometimes like the simple switch that we do in how we're thinking about things. So can you explain that a little bit, like about expanding or looking for new opportunities, just kind of what you said to yourself before and what you say to yourself now or going into it?
Excuse me. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Let's see if I can think of an example. So for instance, in marketing technology, there's lots of different skills and things I do. But at the end of the day, probably one of the things I'm best at in that capacity is I'm a creative problem solver. And I'm really good at taking technical information and talking to technical people and making it very easy to understand. And I can also grasp very concepts that I'm maybe not an expert at and kind of synthesize it. And so, in other words, that can be applied to so many other things. For instance, I've done workshops, I've done mentoring, I've done all these things. It's much like teaching, right? So if you've been a teacher, or in my case, I've been a mentor, I've trained people, all of those skills can be applied to lots of things. You just need the different knowledge. So many things are related to each other. So for me, it would be if somebody's trying to figure out like, how might I shift or expand, then what they might want to do is make a list, make an inventory of all their current skills. And you have to think of skills that may not come to you. It might not be obvious at first. You might ask other people, what am I good at? Or start looking at, your work, your role at home, wherever else, maybe you volunteer, something like that. But as you take inventory, start asking yourself, where else might I use this skill, this experience? And then be open to looking for new opportunities and having conversations with people about those skills and about things that you might be able to do with it.
Yeah. And I think it's so interesting because oftentimes if we look through our life and even looking through different jobs, there's usually like a through line, like something that's the same, like just a thread of something that's similar in all of them. And we can think, oh, they're so different, but usually there is kind of like a similar thread through all of them, which I find interesting.
Absolutely. And I just had a conversation with somebody this week, and we were talking about if someone's really good at the details, they like kind of nitpicking. Oh, why does this word work better than this word? Why does this color work better than this color? Or things like that. They may have been doing a job that had to do with writing or graphic design, but they may be really good at helping somebody put together a website or do A/B testing for online ads because it has to do with very tiny changes. So for instance, you might not even know much about that job, but if you know what interests you and what makes you curious, often we can start seeing, well, how would I use those things that I naturally tend to want to dig into?
Right. Yeah. No, that's so good. What have you found that has helped you through your life, through your career, to be creative or to be, maybe curious is a better word than creative, to be curious to find those other things as opposed to just being like, I don't know, I don't have it all figured out right now.
So first and foremost, it would be my mom. She is a professional artist. She's a children's book author, illustrator, and she's done all sorts of other things. She's the one I started the business with. And she's always been very curious and, a big dreamer. And she, with her art, she's always trying new things. So she calls herself, it's a experiential process. And so one, it was because I've grown up seeing her, take shifts. Like for instance, she used to do different type of art. Now she's doing abstract art, and she's even doing, really huge cement sculptures, 6 feet tall. And my mom's late 70s. And this stuff is very heavy and it's very caustic, but she loves it. And she loves trying new things and trying new techniques. And so for me, that wasn't something that seemed that scary. I think those things are exciting. And so I think it's more start being open to it. And I would recommend for people, start trying to expand what you read, start listening to podcasts that maybe stretch your thinking a little bit, or share those stories of people that have transitioned or expanded in some way, because it starts letting you see the possibilities.
Yeah. What kind of role has like books or podcasts been in your life?
Absolutely. I read or listen to a podcast most every day, I'd say at least 4 to 6 days a week. So for me, they keep me inspired and encouraged. And, and then sometimes I listen to ones that maybe aren't my weekly, I'll look for something new on occasion. But so for me, they're very motivating and inspirational.
Yeah, I know, because there's things that I wouldn't think of myself sometimes, but then if I hear it on like a podcast, and I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. Or how could I apply that in my life,
Absolutely.
So can you talk a little bit about your podcast?
Sure. So my podcast just launched this week, and it's called Building a Life You Love. So the focus is it's a fourfold. It's primarily trying to help you find work that you're passionate about and that you love. And then it's also doing things like, how do you have a good work-life balance? There's going to be woven in episodes. And of course, it'll talk about people's stories, but mainly I want to open people up to their possibilities in their life. But I also want to encourage people to define life on their terms. And an example of that would be, for 3.5 years, I was working for the company that I just, in January, went to just a 10-hour week consulting job for them, or position. So I went from full-time to that. And I just said to them, hey, I'd like to talk to you because I want to move back into doing my own, other things, but I'd still love to keep working with you. I'd still love to continue this relationship. So he said, well, what are you thinking? And he was open to me, the conversation. And I told him, I said, I'm thinking 10 hours a week at this consulting rate. It was nowhere near my, salaried rate, because I knew for 10 hours, I wasn't willing to work for that salaried rate hour. And they agreed to it. We didn't agree to a whole year necessarily. We agreed to try it for, a handful of months and then reassess, and then we'll, keep reassessing. But that allowed me to step back into doing my own thing full time and still have that connection. I enjoy working with them. I just wanted to go back out on my own, and I felt like that was the way I needed to do it. So the podcast is about those types of things. And then of course we tie in the things that I think make life worth living. So we talk about the role of creativity, the role of adventure and play and curiosity and faith in your life. So we tie in those sprinkles as well.
How has creativity helped you in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing about creativity is we don't use it enough, and we downplay it too much, both in the workplace and in our personal lives. The thing about creativity is it allows us to step away from our to-do list, and it allows us to get out of our own way, basically. It lets us think, it truly does let us think outside the box, because we're able to put two ideas together. We're able to, doodle and say, oh, this might be a good idea. Even coming up with a new process and automation can be creative, because maybe it's not the way we thought it was going to happen. So I think if we're willing to, and creativity, I just had a conversation with a creativity coach this week. It's not just about what you think. It's not just painting or art or that, or singing or that music. It's actually, creativity is getting in touch with your self-expression. And it also allows us to connect to other people better. Because think about it, if you always live the same day in and out, kind of like Groundhog Day, routine, what happens is we sort of get stuck in this rut of thinking, I just do this work. I just eat this meal. But if we start being open to the new opportunities and we start open being creative, it's like in the kitchen. You could make the same dish that you love making, or you could say, I'm just going to take all these ingredients out and try something. Well, we're learning when we do that. And then often we find ourselves with a more interesting product when we do that. So I think creativity, anytime we can add it to our, weekly schedule, I think it's really important.
Yeah. And I like what you just said, because as a kid, I sucked at art. I'll just tell you that. And so I thought I was not creative because I sucked at art. And so I just didn't sprinkle creativity at all into my life, because I was like, nope, you're not an artist, or you're not creative, because you can't draw. But there are so many ways to like tap into that, and really just in different areas of your life. And it can be a game changer.
Yep. Yeah, there's so many things you can do to be creative. I mean, even the conversation I just had this week, Alex Kappas, who I was interviewing, creativity coach, but she even talked about, you can even Google incomplete pictures online and print them, and then just continue the picture. It doesn't matter how good they are. The point is it's using a different part of your brain. And if each of us compared them, they would all be different. So there's lots of little exercises we can do that have nothing to do with a paintbrush or song lyrics or anything art at all, actually. I mean, art's amazing for creativity, but there's a lot of other opportunities that we can tap into. Even writing, writing is a creative effort as well.
Yeah. And I think like it doesn't have to just be for business, or, it can just be for your personal life, or just like, I don't care if you're bored in your marriage, start doing like different things, and it like sparks things.
Absolutely. I think it's one of the keys, actually, to if people are finding that they feel unfulfilled or unhappy often, or even not having the joy they want, it's often because they're not curious and they're not being creative, because humans were made to be creative. We were born to use our hands in some way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will add, you can do it sucky. You can do it and be horrible at it. It's just like the practice of doing it.
That's right. 100%.
So how do you find a healthy work-life balance?
Absolutely. So I just had a same things, conversation this week about this, but here's what I said. I schedule in my fun and my celebrations. I pencil out time to take off, either to go do a fun activity, it might be go to the beach, go to lunch with friends. So I actually make sure that when I look to my next week or week and a half out, I actually schedule time off my calendar so it can't get booked for appointments. So that's the first thing I do, is I actually plan for the fun and the creativity and the gatherings. So one, I think it's important. Most people put those things last, and they say, I'm too busy, I don't have time to see friends. But I would challenge you that the beauty of life is actually the connections with people, the relationships, and enjoying life. So for me, it's that I pencil in all the things that I think make life rich, instead of just letting work take over. Of course, I have to work hard, some days, just like everyone else, but I plan it around what else I'm trying to do.
So during COVID, connection has definitely probably been hard for people. Mm-hmm. Is there ways that you're adding that into your life so you can still connect with people and feel full?
Absolutely. So during COVID, for instance, I still did see friends, but we would just, smaller group of friends, but we would meet in the neighborhood to go on a walk. So we'd be outside, we would do things like that, but we did that weekly, at least 2 or 3 times a week. So we still found ways to connect. Of course, we tried online games, through Zoom or House Party. We did that kind of stuff. But now that it's mostly opened back up, not for everyone, but for most of us, absolutely, we're taking advantage of getting to see each other again and have the gatherings. Yes, they might be outside more so, or smaller gatherings, right? Less people. But yeah, and then my family, we do game night, not every week, but most weeks with our sons. So absolutely. I think you're right. A lot of people have gotten used to I don't want to say isolation, because not everybody's isolated, but they've gotten used to that. And so I think you do have to reach out. You have to make an effort and realize, while we did go through that, that's not how we weren't created to live in isolation. We were created to live in community. So you do need to try to reach out, even if it's just texting a few friends or family members and saying, hey, I was thinking about you. I'd love to see if we can connect soon. Even if you can't get together with them in person, set up a phone call or a Zoom call.
Right. Yeah. it's easy to like, once you're used to the isolation, just to keep going down that path, but then it starts to reflect or really sink in, so no, it's definitely helpful. Um, what life isn't all gumdrops and lollipops, right?
That's
I'm
right.
sure you faced some hardships. Can you share one of your hardships you faced in your life and how you've dealt with it?
Sure. So as I was telling you before, the business I started with my mom, Ziggity Zoom, on many counts, it was doing really well. We won lots of awards. Our traffic was really building. We were getting a lot of attention. We did have multiple revenue streams, but as I said, it was just the two of us primarily running it. So it was a lot of work for two people. And the revenue, though, obviously it was on us, but it really never took off the way it really should have. And so I had to kind of step away from it to a period because it was that feeling of the revenue not being where it needed to be. It was just weighing on me, in a way that wasn't probably healthy. And that's actually why I took that other opportunity, is I needed to step away from that full time. I couldn't do it full time. So I still have that business and I'm still working to grow it on the side, but it's not my full focus. But that was really hard, and not only that, because it was with my mom, of course I wanted it to do well because I knew that it would have taken care of her in that financial way. So it was the big burden. I mean, not that she doesn't have other revenue streams, but that was, we put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to that. So that was hard, but I knew the only way to get past it was, one, to sort of see what did we, I don't know that wrong is the wrong word, but what can we learn from it? And so I just tried to understand the lessons that I can take away from that experience. And that's how I move forward, is trying to understand it.
Yeah. So when you're in the time where you're kind of in a rut or feeling stuck, whether it's in your business and life, what do you do to get out of that?
For me, I have to get myself to do things like go outside, take more walks, get in nature, try to read, try to be more inspired, even than maybe my normal week or month, because like you said, it's easy to go back to those thoughts. And so I need to do things that are going to pull me away from thinking about those things. So for me, it's spending time with people that I enjoy spending time with, getting outside, getting a reset basically. And so for me, getting outside, getting with nature, that helps me to sort of, and also to put things in perspective, right? It's a business. It's not to say we couldn't have turned it around. It's not to say we still aren't going to make it something really great, but at that moment, it just wasn't building the way we wanted it to. And so I had to know that that's okay too. Everyone has, like I said, it's not necessarily a failure. It was just on the revenue side, it wasn't what it should be. And I have to accept that and move on.
Yeah. And sometimes what brought you joy or like excitement before, that can change. It can
That's
move
right.
to something completely new. And that's life. It doesn't mean, like you said, it doesn't mean you're a failure. It means
Right.
that you're just pivoting and changing to something else, or in addition to, like, yes,
Yeah,
and.
that's
And
right.
that's always helpful.
Absolutely.
So kind of along that, what do you do for your mindset to keep a positive mindset? Do you have like a morning routine or an evening routine that you do?
Yeah, I do. And then I also have some other thoughts on mindset in general. So for me, what I do is most mornings when I get up, I do pull out a journal, and then I either read a Christian inspirational book or sometimes a business book or self-help, but something, one of those categories. And I will read, a handful of pages, and then whatever stands out to me, I will write in a journal. And then I also spend maybe 15 minutes, some days longer. I'll read scripture or devotional, and then I will write into a prayer journal, and then just maybe write a few things that I wanted to put in that. So that's what I do a lot of mornings. And that really helps me set the tone for the day. And it helps me sort of get in that positive mindset. And the other thing I do actually is I have a printout that it's actually on my website. It's free, but it's like a daily productivity sheet. So on the left is sort of all business, right? It's sort of your 3 projects for the day and your schedule and that sort of thing. But on the right is all the things that sort of ground us and remind us that our day probably isn't the bad 5 minutes we had. It's everything else. So it has everything from a place for a verse or a quote. And then it has things like, what am I thankful for today? Did I do something from a heart of gratitude? Did I do something in personal and self-care? But it just kind of walks through that. And then today will be a good day if, So it might be spending time with my family tonight or something like that. So that's what I do. I try to do that, print that every day and fill it out, because once again, one thing can happen in our day that feels, bad. But when we really reflect on our life, we realize, what, it's all good. That's just a little bump.
So is that something that you do in the morning or at night, or when do you do that?
So I fill out the sheet in the morning, but then of course I have to go back and see, oh, did I actually do that? Did I actually do the thing I said I'm going to do today that would make today meaningful?
Yeah.
So I will take a look at it later that night or in the morning when I fill out the next one.
Yeah. And that can help from kind of like catastrophizing, like being like, oh my gosh, today was so bad, or I didn't get anything done. Like maybe that's not true. You could have got a couple things done,
That's right. Well, I also I think it's important for people to know too. A day is not successful just because we got a lot of things done.
Oh,
you could have gotten nothing done and you had the best day ever. And I don't mean because you like played only or, played hooky from work. I mean, because sometimes we need days to process. We need days to reset. We need days to take a break, a mental break, so that we are actually fresh the next day. So even if I think we're too hard on ourselves, especially in our culture, and I think it would go a lot better if we gave ourselves literally a break. We just relaxed and we scheduled in time for that, time for processing and preparation, and then rest.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because it is easy to be like, to only focus on the goals that we have or the things that we have to accomplish. And sometimes that's not, like you said, that's not what makes a good day or what makes it successful. So thank you for adding that. You said that you had some other ideas about mindset that you wanted to talk about.
Oh, I do. So one of the things that I think can help people start trying to shift their mindset is a lot of us, it's just what happens. We start saying things either about ourselves out loud or maybe in our minds. I mean, I just did a little Instagram post on this, but I've talked to so many people this week and they're like, oh, I'm so old, or I'm so this. And I think, wait, no, you're not. And so what I say is you need to have a mind gatekeeper, right? And so you need to start catching yourself in what you're saying and what you're thinking, both about yourself, about people around you, but also about your life. And if we start catching it, right, and it takes time to get good at this, but if we start catching those things, you need to hold that thought and say, is this really what I want to say about myself? Is this really what I think? Is this the life I want to build? So for instance, if you said, oh, I'm so old, and I'm not saying the person's old, that's just what they're saying.
Right.
Then my point is I don't want to feel old. So I'm not going to use that language. Even if I was 80, I don't want to say I'm so old. I want to be like, I feel 20 and I'm going to go do new things. So it's all about that mindset. So if you kind of gatekeep it and go, that wasn't really the nicest thought, or you know what, I don't want to feel old. I want to feel really good and I want to love my life. Then we need to start replacing those negative words or words that don't put us towards our future with words that will, and I know with your financial, the financial stuff, I'm sure you see that a lot. What we don't want to probably say all the time is I'm so broke. Well, that's not where we're moving towards, right? It's kind of like that. We want to move towards that. I'm good at saving money and I'm good at deciding how to spend money, or whatever it is.
Yeah. And it kind of can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like we're going to say something about ourselves and then that's what you're going to live up to, the very thing that you think about yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, earlier you had mentioned that when you're reading Christian books or whatever it is that you're diving into, that you write in a journal what stands out to you. Can you explain why you do that and how that helps you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I must have 20 journals. They're filled. So I like to go back and I also will put the name of the book, the author, and the page number in those journals so I can find it again, because the honest truth is I would forget, right? I mean, you might be like, I think I know the author. So I do that for a couple of reasons. One is because if it's that good to me and I literally go, oh my gosh, I bookmark it with a tab or a Post-it. I'm a little obsessed with that. But then I put it in this journal because I want to be able to come back to it. And then as I'm working towards writing some different books, I also know that these are things that were so impactful to me that I don't know if I'll share all the stuff, but I'll be able to share these things that really had an impact. That day when I read it, it really spoke to me. So I like to go back and reference things, just like I go back and reference books. I don't necessarily need to read a book all the way through in those categories, the ones I talked about, but I do like to go back and reference part of the book, or get inspired. Sometimes maybe I only have time to read 6 pages. okay, well, if I tabbed it, I can say, oh, what was this I liked? And then I go back and then I realize, oh, this really had impact. I'll just reread this section again.
Yeah, yeah. So that, I don't know, that reminded me, have you ever reread a book and then like completely different things stood out to you or meant something to you? Like I find myself highlighting different things than I thought before.
Absolutely. I think because we're in different places, different seasons of our life, different things will stand out to us. I don't reread fiction books, but I do reread any other type of book. More referencey books, right?
Right, right. So let's end with a tip to encourage women who are in the arena fighting for the life that they want.
Absolutely. Well, what I would tell you is, first of all, you have to be willing to spend a little time each week, or at least for a week or a couple weeks, to start saying, what is it about my life that I would like to change, and make that list. And it might be really minor things, or it might be very big things. And then make a list of, are those things I can change right now? It's me putting those things on me. Or is it something like, I don't get paid enough, my job doesn't pay enough. Or maybe I don't have any flexibility of my schedule, because some professions don't have any flexibility. Well, if that's something that you want to change in the future, write that down. So when you put your first list of what do I want to change, then you make your list of what do I want my life to look like and be different. So that's everything from your daily routine or your weekly routine, because for some people it really is, I want to be able to pick my kids up from school. Well, then you have to have a job or flexibility that allows you to not be at an office, right, at that hour. So you start saying, these are the things I want to figure out. How can I get that type of job? Or how can I go to my boss and ask for that, negotiate? So it doesn't necessarily mean we have to make this huge life transition, but we do need to know what we want. Yeah. And we need to be clear about that. So I think that's a good starting point for people. And plus it lets us realize that we have more power than we think. And if you start there, then of course it's starting to then work on the mindset. You need to start realizing what's holding you back. What are you really thinking in your mind? I just had a conversation with girlfriends the other day, and they were in Florida for spring break, and they said, yeah, this one hotel we just walked by you wouldn't believe it, it's $600 a night. And I said, and they're like, wow, we would never stay there. And I was like, but you shouldn't tell yourself that, even if you wouldn't want to, even if you could have the money, you could spend that. Like, I don't want to make that statement. Just maybe I wouldn't want to spend that money because I thought, I don't need to spend that much money. But I was like, no, don't tell yourself that. Because once again, they don't realize it, but they're just limiting what they could do, or how they do want to spend their money.
Yeah. It's like you're closing yourself off to the possibilities.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. So Kristin, how can we connect with you?
Absolutely. The best way to connect with me is you can find me on my website. It's KristinFitch.com, or on Instagram it's at Kristin Fitch.
So KristinFitch.com, is that where they can find the productivity tool?
It is, absolutely. Everything, I have everything going through my website. That way it's just easy to find everything. Yep, there's a resource page, so you can find it on there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Kristin. You've been a total badass, and I've enjoyed hearing your story.
Thank you for having me.
And with that, we'll end our show. To all the badass women out there staying in the arena, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, own it and get after it. All right, so what did you think of that episode? Wasn't Kristin badass? I really liked so much that she had to say, and I want to talk to you about it. Join me on Wednesday night at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time in the Ordinary to Badass Facebook group. Let's chat about some of the things that Kristin talked about, like defining life on your terms, or writing in a journal her takeaways from books, and also like her productivity and gratitude practice. Let's talk about it. Ordinary to Badass Facebook group, 6:30 Pacific time. I want you to be there. It's so important to me. And if you like this episode, I would be so grateful if you shared it with a friend, shared it with someone who could find so much value from it. That's how other badasses like you, find the show and start to communicate and gather on these Wednesday nights. Building a community of badasses, of supportive women isn't always easy. So I need your help finding those people, finding those badasses who would be a great fit for this community. And I can't do any of this without you. All right. So I will talk to you on Wednesday in the Facebook group. Then on Thursday, you're going to hear why Kristin Fitch is so badass. You are not going to want to miss it. And then on Monday, you're going to hear from Dawn Upone. Dawn is so badass. She was a pastor and she got fired and she started her own business as a copywriter. And now she's making over 6 figures. So amazing. You're definitely going to want to hear her story. Her inspiration really was to be with her family and her kid. So you're not going to want to miss it. All right. I'll talk to you on Wednesday.
Now that you've listened to this episode of Ordinary to Badass, we want to hear from you. Go to our website, ordinarytobadass.com/podcast, and submit your own experience on how you took your life from ordinary to badass and get the chance to be on a future Spotlight episode of the show. That's ordinarytobadass.com/podcast. While you're waiting for the next episode of the show, wipe off the sweat, dust off the dirt, and get back in the arena.